How can average working citizens like us? How can we reform our unjust financial system to erode the wealth and power of big banks, traditional corporations, and the super rich, and redistribute that wealth and power to average working citizens without relying on politicians or regulations? This is the question we ask on the Crowd Effect podcast. I am your host, Paul Lovejoy, activist investment advisor and founder of Stakeholder Enterprise. On today's show, we are going to be wrapping up our discussion of how we can control our actions and reactions to use the power of love to reform our unjust financial system. So let's start off with taking us back to 1857 in India. At that time, the British Empire ruled over the people of India, and they were exploiting the population of India in many ways. One of such ways was that they would enlist the men into their army, and to the reason was it was allowed them to continue their efforts of expansionism and to increase the size of their empire. So they used the men of India as soldiers. Now, in 1857, the Indian soldiers found out that the British used pig and cow grease for their rifle cartridges. And oftentimes the rifle cartridges, they had to pull them out with their teeth and then put them in their guns. And the idea of a Muslim to be putting pig fat in their mouth was one of the most sacrilegious things you could think of. And for the Hindus, the same with the cow grease. And so this led to a revolt, the revolt of 1857, and it was really a, a war to try and gain independence for the people of India. That's what it turned into. It started off with the pig and the cow grease, and it turned into a war for independence. Now, this revolt was eventually crushed by the British Army. They were just too advanced militarily, just had too much experience with fighting in wars, um, and so eventually this revolt was crushed. But the British Empire took a hit in the face. They took a good beating, not just with the loss of life, which was significant. Around 6,000 British troops died, but financially as well. Not only was the British Empire exploiting the population, but they were also exploiting India's resources. They had all this, the silks and spices and teas that they would be stealing from India and selling it to their own population and to countries around the world, which made the British Empire very, very wealthy. So, to prevent this from happening again, the British Empire decided on a divide and rule strategy. So, what they did was they propped up a puppet government for the people of India, and they divided India. They drew lines on India as kind of like gerrymandering in a sense. For different political seats in this new puppet government. And instead of doing two different political parties, the lines were drawn around religious communities. So you had a Muslim party essentially and a Hindu party. And instead of uniting and fighting against the British, they were instead arguing and blaming amongst each other, which is exactly what the British wanted. and the British they were able to continue to exploit India for another 75 years, um, without any major conflicts like this 1857 revolt. The Hindus and Muslims now started blaming each other for the reason why they were occupied by the British Empire. And this continued until 1919, when a young attorney started writing through various publications. I know one was called Young India, that he was announcing to the population of India that he was not going to cooperate with the British government non-violently. It was non-cooperation, a policy of non-cooperation. The young attorney's name was Gandhi, and the British Empire did not want this to happen at all. So they put him on trial for sedition, for writing not to cooperate with the British Empire. And he pled guilty. He's like, "Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I said not to cooperate. Yeah. So if that means I'm guilty, I'm guilty." So he was sent to prison, and during that time, he really started to refine and what I didn't mention was that this Gandhi, he wasn't blaming uh, or even angry at anyone. His reaction was using love. He accepted and respected that the citizens of Britain had a right to live. All humans have a right to live, and have a right to dignity. And this was Gandhi's core belief. So he didn't react with blame and anger. He instead reacted with love and created this um, movement of non cooperation. So when he got out of prison, he decided to do something else. There was these taxes on salt and taxes on clothes for the people of India. And so he announced uh, that he was going to make his own salt and to make his own clothes. This was called the salt. Hopefully I'm pronouncing this right. Sutiagraha, salt sutiagraha, and essentially, that's what he would do. He would the initial one was this huge, massive march to the sea, hundreds of miles, announcing that we're making our own salt and acknowledging when other people came on board to do this march. And it was incredibly successful. The British Empire, they wanted to put a stop to this, and they brutally beat down anyone who was trying to um, make their own salt or make their own clothes. And the foreign press was there and covered it. And they were taking pictures, and the global reaction was was completely disgusted with the way the British Empire were treating here is this guy Gandhi using the power of love. He has the Muslims and Hindus united, actually, and they are going to not to topple the most powerful empire in the world by making their own salt and making their own clothes. And this worked until the Muslims and the Hindus just couldn't work together. This divide and rule that the British started was just so effective that there was no forgiveness that was going on between the Hindus and the Muslims. Now, India finally did get their independence after World War II. The British was they were just bombarded and by Nazi Germany, and they had massive debts to the United States, which actually they just recently repaid a few years ago. I mean, that's how massive this debt was, um, and so they could no longer uh, rule a foreign land like India, and so they left. But before they did, they partitioned India, and the people of India, this puppet government that used to be, it became a real government, and they decided that, yeah, let's partition. We have too much anger and we blame each other. Let's just go our separate ways into our each country. Well, what resulted in that, from all this blame and anger, was this massive eruption of violence throughout the country. Um, it eh, it ended up being 14 million people moved. So you had Hindus who lived in Pakistan. They moved south to India, because prior to this, Pakistan, that wasn't a country; it was just India. And so the British Empire divided it, and the Hindus living in Pakistan, they came to India. The Muslims living in India moved to Pakistan and Bangladesh, um, and and it's estimated that 1 million people died as a result of this partitioning. The violence against women during this partition is unfathomable. The sheer number of rapes that occurred. Um, it was one of the darkest periods you could possibly think of. Gandhi was still alive, and he had to witness this. Here he was, successfully uniting the people of India with the power of love, which really did end up. Another interesting note was that Roosevelt, the U.S. president at that time, Franklin Roosevelt, was very affected by Gandhi, and part of the terms of the loan that the United States offered to Britain was to give up their rule of foreign lands, particularly India. Um, and so Gandhi indirectly was the reason for the independence of India, because the Indians, they were the British Empire were just making, it was such a huge cash cow, this country was for them, and it certainly would have been something to continue, exploiting the country to rebuild their efforts after World War II, but it couldn't happen. So back to the violence of partitioning. So that the anger and the blame never went away. It never went away. And even today, there is still violence between India and Pakistan in this Kashmir region. From Since 1988, it's estimated that 48,000 people have died from this violence between India and Pakistan. In 2018, over, let's see, 586 people died in this conflict. So it's still ongoing. 2019, around 300 people died. So the blame and the arguing has never stopped. India got a nuclear weapon, and so then Pakistan had to get a nuclear weapon, and now you have two, countries who are angry at each other, blaming each other, that are nuclear powers. Um, and so reacting with blame and anger, this is the road it leads us down. So if we continue to react with blame and anger in our financial system, which is what we're doing, uh, progressives are blaming and angry at populists. Populists are angry and blaming progressives. And meanwhile, The big banks, the powerful corporations, and the super rich are living, um, business as usual. They're continuing their exploitive practices on the people, while the people are divided and blaming and angry at one another. And there are acts of violence now that are happening because of this division. So something has to change. Eh, we need to stop blaming. We need to stop this anger and blame, and instead use the power of love. Now, I grew up hearing that the power of love is the most powerful force in the world, and I'm sure you have too. But I didn't really believe it until recently, until I've really understood what I have control over, and by reacting with love, giving me this clarity of mind. And what if love is the most powerful force in the world? What if? Then we can absolutely reform our financial system. What if we all believe that? I know Gandhi believed in the power of love. I believe in the power of love. And I believe that through this, we can reform our unjust financial system. We can create an economy that looks out for the well being of ourselves, each other, and our planet's finite resources. My name is Paul Lovejoy. I'm a crowd investor, and I see you are one too. If you'd like to know how to uh, reform our unjust financial system democratically without protesting or divisive political action, then visit my website, stakeholderenterprise.com.